And you've just heard Callum Ruarg Nicholson, Bard of Skye, the opening track from Blair Coron's new album, Cairn. And I'm delighted to be joined by Blair now. Hello, Blair.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Oh,
it's like the first speaking interview I've had in quite a while. It's going to take a little bit of time to get used to it. And I've been in the garden for the last 4 hours replanting trees. I feel like my mind is still out there at the moment. Well, I'm drunk on nature just now.
I'm sure it'll all come flooding back. But that is interesting that you have been spending time with nature, because that's certainly an aspect of Cairn. And that track we've just heard really sets the tone for the album. How do you think of it? How do you describe it to people?
I always find with my music that it always means something different to different people.
Sure.
I have my own understanding of what it means to me and where it came from. But I always feel that I can never impose my feelings on what it means to other people, because they respond to it in their own ways. I think the simplest way to describe this one would be it's reminiscences of Scotland from across time. It's not my own personal reminiscences. It's they come from archives. They're people who once were, who used to live in the Highlands and Islands predominantly. And in the interviews, they're discussing just everyday things, you know, just moments from their childhood, moments of or from around their areas, or just people that they would come across in their lives. And then the music that I created in the background to that is, I see it as like the radio in the corner. Like we're in their living rooms, we're in their kitchens, we're like around the fire with them, just having a conversation with them, listening to them telling their stories, and the radio's just playing in the background while we're having our tea. And that's what I see my music as. It's just pushing the story along. It's the soundtrack to their stories and elevating the emotions that I was feeling at the time when listening to them. And yeah, that's really what I would say is it's reminiscence of Scotland, of the everyday people, to get a deeper understanding of what it meant to live in a time that we are not part of anymore, and when things were different. And it really came from, I feel like it's something that you never really experience if you read about history in Scottish history in a book, or you go to a museum and you've got these pictures and you're reading it, but you're not really experiencing the past. And that's what I wanted to create with this. I wanted it to be a personal journey through other people's lives that once were, which we could never really experience now.
So how did you find the voices that you wanted to have on it, you know, the archive aspect of it? Was that something that you had to go away and go through a lot to pick the ones that you had, or was there another aspect to it?
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of things that led up to the voices I chose. It really stemmed from, I think it was in 2020. It was just after we'd come out of the first lockdown, and I went out to do the West Highland Way. I just needed this big burst of nature, just this big grand experience of the Highlands. So we'd all been locked down in our cities and in our houses for the last few months since then. So I did the West Highland Way, and which anyone listening who doesn't know what that is, it's a 90-mile walk from Glasgow to Fort William. You camp the entire way. You're just in nature the entire time, walking over mountains, walking around lochs, through forests. And then the entire time I was just so in awe with the nature around me. And I wanted to know more about the every tree that I came across, like who else had seen this tree in the past? What did it mean to them? Or any rock which I might have seen, was it once a fairy hill, or was it once a meeting place for people, or a way marker? And all these little things, I sort of compiled them in my mind, and returning back from the trip, I then just researched everything on this website. It's called Oberon Dulcus, which is, it's an audible documentation of Scotland. Just people telling their stories of their lives. A compilation of poetry and songs from across the time. And it was simply a case of typing in the keywords of the things which I had experienced on the trip, and really just spending hours and hours and weeks just listening to hundreds of people telling me their stories, and just their experiences of Scotland. And then it was that I then realized I had to create art with this.
Yeah.
Which, being as a musician, you want to create something which matches to the rhythms of the people that you're speaking, and you also want to leave the pauses for your own music to break through in their conversations. So it was a mixture of finding stories which were interesting and relating to the experiences I was finding on the journey, but then also the technical aspects of finding people who weren't just constantly speaking with no room for me to be there, or you couldn't really understand what they were saying, or they were just inaudible, really. So it was a mixture of things, and it was just listening to hundreds and hundreds of people and then just breaking it down into the key factors of what would then make this a good thing for people to sit down to and enjoy, beyond it being an archival recording of someone, really.
That's so interesting to hear, because what struck me listening to the album is the conversations, or the spoken word. It's almost seamlessly with the music, and the spaces in between what's been spoken are also similar to the spaces between the notes that are being played and made, And I think with your music, I've often thought it's that you allow your music to breathe, for want of a better term, that there's, it is the spaces and the things that in between. You don't fill every single silence. And that runs right through the album.
Yes, absolutely, because not everyone, well, if you listen to a completely polished album, you have to get rid of all the sighing or the breathing or the creaks of the piano, all these little things which that's what makes up life. It's all these things which aren't the finished product, really. People do have to cough. People do have to laugh. They do have to sigh. They have to take a minute to think about what they say. And as a musician, I'm playing acoustic instruments. The piano does creak. You do hear hammer sounds. You do hear the wobble of a stool. And that was really the whole idea with how it came audibly, is if those sounds weren't there, it would ruin, you wouldn't get the same feeling of being in someone's living room with the fridge background or a radiator rattling, all these little things. It was intentionally immersive in a way, I would say. And
on some of the tracks that are on sounds of nature, for want of a better term, you've got birdsong and things like that. Now, was that there already in the archive, or was that something that was part of your music? Because I couldn't quite make out which was which is probably a good thing.
Yeah, the birdsong one, that's an archival recording. I can't remember who the archivist was. He used to own used to live on the Isle of Canna, him and his wife, and they used to live in Canna House, which they then donated to the National Trust of Scotland. I really can't remember his name. He's a really important archivist. But yeah, him and his wife, they just documented life on Canna at the time they were living there, and the birdsong is just one of those recordings. I think it was taken on the Midsummer in, yeah, I've got the name here actually. Oh yeah, so Midsummer 1951 at 4:15 a.m. I like how specific it is, like these exact birds at this exact time of day.
And I can imagine that that's very true. The birds at that time of day would have been the same ones every single morning.
Exactly, yeah.
And have you had feedback? Now, originally, before I realized it was archive, I was going to ask you, have you had feedback from the album from those involved? But of course, those involved, I would imagine, are tasked, unfortunately, or puzzled to say.
Yeah.
But what has the feedback on the album in general been like?
It has been really lovely. It's been a mixture of people telling me that it's reminded me of their grandparents, which are no longer with them, or people who are living abroad. It's made them just incredibly homesick or reminded them of their childhood. And I think that was the entire purpose of it, is not only is it a document of history, it was just to make people feel connected to the land which they're from or which they were from. And just to share stories. And it also stemmed from the pandemic, from being locked down, and when we weren't allowed to travel around and see the nature around us, or meet our grandparents and things. And I think it has been that it's allowed for that escape, or provided that moment which people didn't really have at the time anymore. Yeah.
And it seems to me, and perhaps it's the similar reasons that these things have happened, but there is there's been a lot of music made recently which has been a connection with nature. I'm thinking of Jenny Sturgeon's The Living Mountain, the Spell Songs project that Kareem Pollard and many others, Julie Fowles are involved in, and other people as well. And maybe it is that thing about just getting out to nature again, or realizing how much importance it has being in the natural world instead of just being within four walls.
Yes, no, absolutely. And I think one of the positives, I guess you could call that positive, is I always find it difficult to talk about positives out of the whole coronavirus situation. But I do feel like people have understood the importance of nature, or they've realized what they've been missing through being locked down in a city or being locked down within their rooms. And it's always been there. I think it's just people have always needed that light bulb moment to realize that, oh, wait a minute, now I'm stuck in a city. I need to get out of the city. And I need to hear bird song. I need to breathe in the fresh air. So it has been a wonderful thing that's appeared from this. And
do you intend to do live events with this album? Is that something? Because I know from previous experience that often your live events, you do them in special places or different spaces than maybe would normally have live music. And in this album, it seems to me absolutely lends itself to that possibility. Is that something that you intend to do?
Yeah. To be honest, I'm still in the process of working that out, because it was written with the intention to be sat down on your sofa with your cup of tea or with your dinner, just listening to people. So I am still trying to work out how that would work in a live setting. Unless I open up my own living room and invite people to come into my house, and then we can just have a little chat and have cups of tea going around, and
just get a really big sofa and then have
exactly. So yeah, I'm unsure at this moment. I think I will perform elements of it within my live sets moving forward. I don't know if I would create an entire show around it. I have thought, even just outside of the project now, within my own shows, that I do want to incorporate these elements of storytelling, or these sort of moments of folklore which people don't really know anymore, just incorporate these into the set. Because I find with everything that I create, at the time they're written as separate items, but eventually it's all going to come together as being who I am. It's going to be my like overall expression of myself. And so far, I've predominantly written instrumental music. And again, like I was saying earlier, it's hard to, or I choose not to explain what the songs were about, because I want the audience to have no concept of that beforehand, and then when they choose to close their eyes and then just listen to the music and get taken away, they then go into their own landscape. But I'm in my own landscape playing the music, but they're completely different environments. And I've always felt I've been missing that connection with me, or there's minimal speaking in my shows.
Yeah,
it's a good thing, so it matches up with the music. But I think with this project, this will be my gateway to talking to the audience in a way, just sharing stories. It's always I've always found it being a very awkward moment, just playing a song, then turning around and having a chat to people with the music that I create, because I don't want to take them outside of the feelings that they're having. So, and I've not performed a live show yet since we've been allowed to again. So I am still crafting how I'm going to work that out, but it'll be part of the show from now on. I think I'll be talking to people again.
It's really interesting. A couple of things there which are really interesting. One, I completely know what you mean, because when I've seen you play live, you almost want one track to not run into the other, but it's part of one piece almost, even though they're individual. You know, it's one evening or one set or however it's set out. But the other thing is the archive spoken pieces that you have on the album, although they are talking about specific things, again, people can read into them their own, as you said, perhaps their own grandparents or people from the community who have talked about things like that. And although they're specific, they're also something that other people you can empathize and identify.
Yeah, I think so. That even though these are 8 tracks speaking about specific things, it is my hope for people to then even just like go away and talk to their grandparents afterwards and just reminisce about times of the past and talk about stories which they might not have asked about before. Or even just like go and research themselves about other elements of folklore which once were, or even just do what I did, is go into onto the archival website and just look up things which they're interested in and see other people's takes on what once existed. Yeah.
Well, Blair, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. I really do appreciate it.
No, thanks very much. Thanks for asking me to come on here as well. And I hope it won't be too long before I can see you in your physical form again as well.
That would be nice,
yes,
wouldn't it? Absolutely.
Yes.
And this is Blair Coron and Kayleigh.